Hello, my name is Sarah Speckman, and I am here today to tell you about the history of American Sign Language. In the early 19th century, Dr. Thomas Gallaudet was approached by his neighbor, Dr. Mason Cogswell, about finding a way to communicate with his deaf daughter, Alice. Now, almost 200 years later, American Sign Language is the fourth most popular language in the nation and is used internationally throughout the world. The development of ASL has proven to be a valuable and important part of American history. When I learned sign language, it was helpful for me to know the history behind it. It made it more personal for me, and I hope it will do the same for you. I believe the more you know about where it came from, the greater appreciation you'll have for it, and the better you'll be able to be connected to it in your understanding. Sign language has been around much longer than people think. History suggests even from the time of Christ, gestures have been in place among deaf individuals for communication. Aristotle, however, implied that the theory of speech and learning were the same thing, and so society began to cast out deaf people, and all forms of sign communication was looked down on. The deaf community remained in this position until about the mid-1700s. In 1771, a French minister was visiting the home of a church member where he saw two children signing to one another. He realized sign language would be a good way to educate deaf children to communicate, and he opened the first deaf school in France. It was totally free. In 1816, Dr. Gallaudet traveled to Europe to meet the graduates of his schools, where there he met Laurent Clerc, a deaf man whom he persuaded to come to America to start a school for the deaf. He became the first teacher at the American Asylum in Hartford, Connecticut. According to the NHIS Hearing Supplement, 500,000 Americans as of right now suffer from hearing loss and/or deafness, 8% of that being children. As of June 2010, nearly 100,000 children suffer from hearing loss under the age of 5 were known as profoundly deaf. Deaf individuals throughout history have not only promoted awareness, but also accomplished great things. We all know of Helen Keller, the deaf and blind woman who overcame obstacles that turned her life into an incredible statement of determination. But there are many other people who have done the same thing that aren't so well known. Sue Thomas, a woman born in Youngstown, Ohio, went deaf suddenly at the age of 18 months. Though her struggle through her childhood and adolescence was very hard, she went on to graduate from Springfield College with a bachelor's degree and worked with a surveillance unit in the FBI for 4 years doing undercover work reading lips for videos. Marlene Matlin was the first deaf woman to win an Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Children of a Lesser God, which is a movie about a deaf school and a teacher there. Deanne Bray is a deaf actress she's been deaf since birth. She portrayed Sue Thomas in the TV show. In the TV show about the actual experiences that she had there. Heather Whitestone was the first deaf woman to win the title of Miss America. She won in 1995. Julia Brace was an early American deafblind student at the Hartford School for the Deaf. She was born in 1807 to 1884. She's kind of a predecessor to Helen Keller. William Ellsworth Hoy, or Dummy Hoy as he was called, was an American center fielder in Major League Baseball. He played several seasons until 1902 with the Cincinnati Reds and 2 in Washington, D.C. He's noted being the most accomplished deaf player in Major League history. The development of sign language has come a long way. In France, it was largely they had their own system. It was called French Sign Language. And then when they came to America, when Dr. Gallaudet brought his school to America, he decided that using every single word in a sentence was not helpful to deaf children or deaf individuals whatsoever. Therefore, the people at the school created sign glosses, which is the term for a sentence in sign language. It uses the important words of a sentence rather than the pronouns than the things like that. When I was learning sign language, it was much more helpful for me to not know every single word like the pronouns or prepositions, because it doesn't make sense. If you're signing to somebody, you don't mean that. They don't use grammar, they use main points. The pioneers of sign language had a huge task with trying to get ASL recognized as a foreign language. Most people decided that it was a form of communication, but it didn't qualify for anything. That's not true. It is now recognized as foreign language. It is the 4th most popular in the entire nation. Each country has its own code of sign language. If you go to Japan, there'll be Japanese sign language. If you go to China, there'll be Chinese. If you go to Mexico, there's Mexican sign language. It goes all around the world, and terms each change from region to region. Within the United States, the East Coast has different terms for colors than the West Coast does. If you go to California and you do this, it's a slang term. In Ohio, with the East Coast, if you do this, this is the sign for the color yellow. So things change region to region. You never really know what you're going to get. I think that's about it. But sign language has just come a long way, and I think with you guys, when you do your signing for silent praise and things like that, it's more helpful if you know where things have come from. I think you'll be able to connect to it better, and your understanding is a little bit stronger of it. So, thank you for listening. What's the beginning? Natalie! You're supposed to be clapping. Oh, sorry.